Today, we recount the history of a very greedy race that supplied both sides of the conflict, the Moons. These ruthless beings were financial and mathematical geniuses. They conquered worlds not through weapons, but through vast capital. These colonizers dreamed of creating a third force in the galaxy, but their greed and arrogance destroyed all plans. Today, we will tell the story of the beginning of their downfall. The Battle of Muunilinst. The Moons were tall, svelte humanoids with slender bodies and distinctively elongated heads. They had hairless, sickly-looking, pale grey or pale pink skin. Likely because most Moons did not enjoy traveling even on the surface of their own planet. Spending nearly their entire lives indoors, the Moons possessed exceptionally advanced intellects. In their approach to commerce, greed was combined with caution. They were always drawn to lucrative economic opportunities, but every Moon would ponder for a long time before entering into a commercial deal. The Moon's gift for handling money originated from their exceptionally valuable mathematical and statistical abilities. Even Moon children could derive complex mathematical formulas at a speed achievable only by adult representatives of other races. They were not averse to exploiting others if they considered it necessary. Additionally, the Moons were obsessed with competition both with other races and within their own, manifesting in massive economic growth wherever Moons were present. It is believed that the primary values of their race were honesty and fairness. However, delving deeper into the study of their species, I arrived at precisely the opposite conclusions. These were very sly and, in their own way, cruel beings. If Kaminoans were cruel and extremely cold-blooded because they often did not understand how they could offend others, these guys understood everything perfectly and actively took advantage of the naivety or foolishness of other peoples. Contrary to popular belief, the Moons did not originate on Muunilinst. Their people were from the planet Scipio. Due to the poverty of their home world, which was largely a chunk of enormous ice in space, this race began colonizing planets that possessed rich resources and minerals, including Muunilinst, which later became their capital. The spread of light-speed travel technology provided a boost to the Moon's plans. From there, Brack Sector's path lay, an important hyperspace route in the northern quadrant of the Outer Rim, used for rapid commercial transport. In addition to this, they colonized the planets Bastion, Agamar, and Megiddo, through which they were able to rapidly amass wealth. They valued Muunilinst so much that they even built the most expensive space elevator in the galaxy, connecting the upper port with the capital city of Muunilinst, Hanedan, to avoid polluting the atmosphere with engine exhaust. And these measures yielded their fruits. Many who had visited Muunilinst acknowledged that this planet had the most beautiful sky in the galaxy. The economic instability in the Republic observed towards the end of its existence allowed the clan to become one of the leading financial organizations. An important role in the rise of the Moons was played by San Hill, the chairman of the intergalactic banking clan. Many independent worlds turned to the banking clan for financial assistance. San Hill sensed the rebellious sentiments of many worlds. He did not join them, but decided to help by mortgaging them into debt slavery. For instance, the Republic forbade the use of any weapons, even defensive ones. Naturally, it monitored the expenditures of worlds to ensure they did not purchase anything behind the Senate's back. This was done, of course, poorly, as some worlds openly spent money on armaments and presented the Senate with a fait accompli. Nevertheless, there were still many who were afraid to engage in such schemes. And here the banking clan came onto the scene, offering loans and suggesting its subsidiary weapon manufacturing company. With the emergence of debtors, a security and collection department was organized, armed with flame battle droids, which allowed the clan to defend its interests and politely remind them about debts that should be paid on time. And here you might say credits and other machinations are understandable. But how did they openly collect debts from entire worlds? What was the Republic doing at that moment? It was all about corruption and cronyism. The banking clan quickly integrated into the Republican financial system and became one of the largest sources of income. Meanwhile, Hill worked closely with the leaders of the Techno Union and the Commerce Guild, nullifying all competition which they were already winning. As you can see, the banking clan, due to its contributions to the treasury, forced the Republic to turn a blind eye to all their atrocities against debtors, essentially a large monthly bribe for silence. On the other hand, even if the Republic decided to take action, close ties with other major financial moguls of the galaxy would have deprived the Senate of all income. At this moment, introductions between Sandhill and Count Dooku occur through the representatives of the Trade Federation. Both of them saw the weaknesses of the Republic and understood that the thoroughly rotten system would soon fall, and the banking clan wanted to extract the maximum profit from this, marking the integration of the Muunilinst into the Separatist Alliance. While many worlds were choosing sides, Sandhill insisted that the banking clan would work both with the Republic and the Separatists, which was not without grounds. Despite the production of droids, the banking clan did not have its own full-fledged army. They utilized the services of mercenaries who would complete the contract and then depart, which was why Dooku did not object, knowing that the strength of the Moons lay in their wealth, and that if these lanky mathematicians tried to cause trouble somewhere, they could be restrained immediately. Sandhill understood that having weaknesses in the great game was an unacceptable luxury, which prompted him to swiftly create an army. Thus, he became acquainted with the future General Grievous. Kimayan Jai Shilal, a male Kaleesh, and the future Supreme Commander of the Separatist Droid Army. Here I will briefly recount his biography. He was born on a world that had been at war for over 100 years. His home planet was attacked by the insect-like Yamri, who were at a higher level of technological development than the Kaleesh. The Yamri had conquered many planets. They used the resources of the conquered worlds for trade and colonized the planets themselves. Since there were practically no valuable mineral resources on the arid Kali, they decided to turn the Kaleesh themselves into a trade resource by conquering them. The Kaleesh continually staged uprisings. All the boys of his ancestors fought, either openly or by picking off the enemy one by one. This spirit of freedom naturally imbued itself in young Kimayan. From a young age, his father taught him marksmanship, and soon the boy became an excellent sniper. By the age of 22, he had killed so many invaders that he became a hero to his people, akin to a demigod. Around this time, he met Rondaru Lij Kumar, a woman who became his closest friend and possibly his only love. Unfortunately, this love had a tragic end. In one battle on the shores of the Genua Sea, when they had to separate, Rondaru was killed. This death was a blow from which Kimayan never fully recovered. Subsequently, he changed his name to signify that he would eternally mourn her. From then on, he became known as Grievous, meaning the mournful one. In time, Grievous became the most famous and most ruthless warlord of the Kaleesh. The warriors he recruited from the Hokesh killed the Yamri by the thousands, and soon the invaders were forced to leave the planet. Not content with what he had achieved, Grievous began conquering Yamri colonies, destroying everything in his path, making no exceptions even for civilians. News of the great warrior swiftly spread across the galaxy. First and foremost, this news reached the Separatists. After Grievous's forces captured the planet Tovaskal, the Yamri sought help from the Trade Federation. Dooku advised the Neimoidians to appeal to the Senate, and later you will understand why. The Republic's Judicial Department, considering the Trade Federation's request, sent a team of Jedi to Tovaskal. Under pressure from the Senate, it was decided that the actions of the Kaleesh were illegal. They were ordered to return the Yamri colonies and pay a huge fine. Thus gloriously ended the Huk War, and General Grievous, along with his elite Voshru troops, had to return to Kali. Thanks to this action, Dooku managed to keep the Separatist Alliance a secret, turn the elite army and their experienced general against the Republic, as well as demonstrate that while the Republic imposes peaceful solutions through negotiations and investigation, it sends its thugs with sabers to quickly resolve issues without delving into details. Not bad, right? The Kaleesh, on whose land the war had been raging for over 100 years, couldn't pay off their debts. Soon famine began on their planet, and Grievous had to watch his people die slowly. The Republic, as well as the Jedi, no longer cared about this humanitarian catastrophe as they considered the conflict resolved. Everyone was indifferent except for Sandhill, who observed all this from the sidelines. The chairman of the intergalactic banking clan waiting until the situation became critical, arrived on the planet with a proposal. He agreed to pay off half of the debts in exchange for Grievous's service to his clan. The general detested the idea of working as an enforcer for the banking clan's competitors, but of course had no choice. He left his warriors on Kaylee since the clan was primarily interested in testing their droid army in action. Before long, he proved his and their effectiveness, collecting the debt from Ord Mantell and capturing the Flut Design Systems Company. Despite this, Grievous criticized the droids but didn't want to involve his former army, turning those great warriors into collectors. Listening to his criticism, the Moons provided the general with prototype IG-100 Magna Guards droids. Although initially Grievous was quite disappointed with the new model of droids, subsequent software improvements allowed him to train them to fight very well. Thus, San Hill, with a solid financial base behind him, acquired an army with an experienced general. For a while, Grievous became the head of the clan's security department. But then it was discovered that the Yamrii, recovering from their defeat, decided to take revenge with the reparations received from the Kalish and the banking clan. While Grievous was far from his homeland, the Yamrii desecrated the warrior graves of the Kalish on one of the colony planets. The Republic, as the guarantor of security and stability, along with the Jedi Order, chose to ignore this act of vandalism. Enraged by such duplicity, he broke his agreement with the banking clan and returned to Kali to lead the new war against the Yamrii. San Hill was not surprised by this act, but realized that his race had become vulnerable again, and the stakes were too high. For some time, he contemplated the possibility of assassinating Grievous as a show execution, but then decided to abandon such plans, fearing the general's retaliation if he were to survive the assassination attempt. Yes, in one way or another, he needed a general capable of destroying a large army with a small one. He and the Geonosian Archduke Poggle the Lesser, with the support of Count Dooku, devised another plan, more complex and cunning. An ion bomb was planted in General Grievous's ship called Martyr, which exploded at the moment when the ship was flying over the Sea of Janwai. Everyone on that ship, except for Grievous himself, perished in the explosion. Dooku's ship rescued the general. Using Sith heart-stunning techniques, the Count put Grievous into a state of stasis and ordered the Magna Guards to take him to Geonosis. San Hill had hoped to return the general to his army, but Dooku intervened, altering the terms of the deal. He wanted to make Grievous one of the generals of the Separatist Alliance army. Hill, realizing that he had lost this deal, humbly accepted the terms. After the Kalish incident with Grievous's ship, the clan agreed to pay for his transformation into a cyborg. Dooku, aware of the Mun's arrogance in order to not upset Hill too much, struck a lucrative deal for the supply of IG-227 Firehail droid tanks and other droids of the same series to the Separatist army. Additionally, he empowered the banking clan with the role of the primary recruiter of new allies for the Separatists. The fact is, by the 22nd year BBY, many were disillusioned with the Republic. What did the banking clan take advantage of? They started working with the currencies of star systems that wished to secede from the Republic. If previously it took 2 years to register a new currency, after the clan's innovations, it could be done in 30 standard minutes. The funds earned in currency exchanges went to finance the initiatives of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Behind this facade of profitable deals and privileged positions within the Separatist camp, Count Dooku, unnoticed by the Moons, deprived them of the army they were so desperately trying to create. Thus, he secured control over them. On Geonosis, during the proclamation of the Separatist Alliance, San Hill finally joined the Separatist Council, thereby depriving the banking clan of the last hope to become the third major power to emerge as the absolute victor from the ashes of the future war. With the onset of the Clone Wars under Chancellor Palpatine, questions were openly raised in the Senate about major financial organizations profiting from the war by extending loans to both sides. The banking clan was most often criticized. The Moons did not anticipate such a sharp change in relations. If before the war the Republic, one might say, feared them, now open accusations were being thrown at them. The banking clan itself tried to maintain neutrality, presenting itself as a third party in the conflict. explaining that the companies selling weapons and droids to the Separatists were only partially related to them. In other words, they presented their subsidiaries as firms in which they held only a minor stake. Sandhill retained his membership in the Separatist Council in secret, albeit not for long. Immediately after the proclamation of the Separatist Alliance on Geonosis, the Republic invaded the planet with its brand new army, and Hill narrowly avoided becoming one of the captives. In an attempt to escape the planet, his ship sustained significant damage and was unable to reach space. For several weeks he was forced to drift above the deserts of Iyach. Despite all the difficulties, though Sandhill managed to avoid capture, his presence was still recorded. Nevertheless, the Republic continued to take out loans. The banking clan continued to brazenly operate, seeing that while the new government barked, it took no actions. For instance, on Argao, the Separatists openly made military deals with the underworld, which clearly showed that not only was the banking clan providing the Separatist Alliance with loans at lower rates, but it also openly manufactured droids and equipment for them. The final act was the creation of a Confederate version of the HoloNet. This became the secret financial channels of the banking clan for launching Shadow Feed, a secret analog of the HoloNet used for spreading propaganda across the galaxy. It was also used as a means for the Confederation leaders to unobtrusively send messages to their subordinates, which made the banking clan an invaluable member. The fact is that unlike the Republic, the Separatists had substantial finances, and while the Republic constantly delayed payments, the Separatists almost always paid on time. And here one could apply the famous quote, "Business is business," but the Republic saw it differently. The invisible hand of the market is of course great, but only when you control that hand. Therefore, the Chancellor made the decision to seize the banking clan. 4 months after the Battle of Geonosis, the Supreme Commander invited Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Yoda to inform them of his intentions. Already at that time, maintaining a close relationship with Obi-Wan's apprentice, Palpatine demanded that Anakin solely lead the clone army in space, arguing that the young man was one of the best pilots in the galaxy. Obi-Wan attempted to object, but he was tasked with leading the ground invasion with the other Jedi, which was to occur simultaneously with the aerial combat. It was decided that General Skywalker would lead the starfighter forces of V-19S into battle, destroying the enemy fleet and the Muunilinst battle platforms, while Obi-Wan Kenobi would lead the ground forces, consisting of the 3rd Systems Army, which included Pajai Squad, Ghost Company, 2nd Airborne Company, 212th Attack Battalion, 7th Sky Corps, 442nd Siege Battalion, and the 501st Legion. Also participating in the battle will be General Wulvif Mon and General Oshi Jid, who will lead the 91st Reconnaissance Corps and their unnamed units. Additionally, the Muunilinst -10 Squad and the Lancer Battalion, whose baptism by fire will not go very well. After invasion plans were drawn up, Count Dooku was immediately informed and only sent a ground army to assist Sandhill. Most likely this was insisted upon by Darth Sidious himself, aiming to weaken the Moons by depriving them of all conquests. It is worth noting that the droid ground army outnumbered the clone army both in terms of technology and in terms of sheer droid numbers. Since the Moons were deprived of their general and Grievous had already been appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Alliance of Separatist Forces, a mercenary named Durge was sent to Muunilinst. He was a representative of the Gendai race, one of the most famous bounty hunters in the last decades of the Old Republic's existence. He wore polished armor, engraved with the symbols of Mandalorian warriors he had killed. Durge had operated in the galaxy for approximately 2,000 years. Capable of surviving the most dangerous situations thanks to the legacy of the Gendai race and enhanced combat armor, he fought in several wars and managed to collect numerous awards and trophies. Over many centuries, Durge developed a strong dislike for Mandalorians and once even killed their leader. Due to endured tortures and personal tragedy, his mind became increasingly unstable over time. Durge fixated on the idea of killing the Republic's clone soldiers, copies of the Mandalorian Jango Fett, and so during the Clone Wars he fought on the side of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. In the legends, this guy has a very interesting and long history, but unfortunately, In the new canon, only a couple of lines remain about him. Upon entering the planet's system, the Republican fleet immediately engaged in battle. Although the defensive fleet was inferior to the Republican, it still managed to inflict damage on the landing ships. In one such approach, one of the Jedi generals, Oshijid, was killed. It is unknown whether his Padawan Theogron survived, as there is no information about him, and it is not even definitively known what gender they were. In the first minutes of the battle, the clone army began to suffer heavy losses, as there were no fortifications or cover positions on the approaches to the capital, and aviation was shot down in fiery barrages. The droid army was in no better situation. The troops had only just been deployed and had no time to take up or construct defensive positions, but the Separatists still had a chance to win the battle, to prevent the Republic from landing their equipment. The fact is, in addition to standard ATTs, self-propelled heavy artillery units, or SPHAs, were deployed in the battle. This equipment, as you can infer from its concise name, represented a serious opponent, and the Moons had nothing to counter it. While the Separatists outnumbered the Republic in this battle, the CIS had no heavy equipment. In order to prevent the Republic forces from securing a foothold, an army of droids was sent directly at the enemy, aiming to overwhelm them with sheer numbers and substantial military power, while time was on their side. The Separatist counterattack was successful initially, since the city was defended by a single artillery unit, which was positioned deep within the city. However, due to the rapid landing, the desperate resistance of the clones and the Jedi, the Republic managed to hold the foothold and secure the landing of their equipment. Upon landing, the ATTEs, all-terrain tactical enforcers, immediately began eliminating everything in their path. Despite the defensive artillery installations, their range was insufficient to strike the Republic's heavy equipment, allowing the Republic forces to decimate the dense ranks of the droid army with ease. But do not think the Republic infantry had an easy time either. They were also being devastated by the enemy's artillery, albeit a singular one. The light and varied vehicles of the Republic compensated for this disadvantage. Understanding that such an exchange of casualties was not advantageous, the Republic army endeavored not to remain stagnant. To break through the dense enemy ranks, their artillery simply leveled the city, burying both the droid army and the local inhabitants who sheltered in the buildings under the rubble. The dense urban layout impeded the progress of their vehicles, hence they did not spare artillery shells on the buildings, reducing them to dust. This strategy allowed the Republic to rapidly advance deeper into the city, giving the Separatists no chance to mount a counterattack. The only remaining problem was the artillery installation. Command was aware of this weapon, so Obi-Wan had already briefed the Muunilinst 10 squad before arriving on Muunilinst. This unit, made up of Alpha-class ARC clones, was under the command of Captain Alpha 77, also known as Fordo. The task of this squad was to infiltrate the enemy's rear lines and destroy these installations, as well as capture all members of the banking clan. The squad successfully separated from the main landing group and infiltrated the capital, while all forces were distracted by Kenobi. Despite this, inside the city, the squad's craft was shot down and surrounded by droids, but thanks to their skills, they managed to break out of the encirclement, eliminate the enemy, and continue their mission. Climbing onto the artillery installation, the squad mined it and then ascended to the roof of the defense headquarters, awaiting Obi-Wan. After the destruction of the sole installation that provided any cover to the retreating Separatist forces, panic ensued among the members of the banking clan. They were never renowned for their military skills and always preferred to silence their opponents with money, but this time, that was not an option. Their capital, once one of the most beautiful places in the galaxy, was turning into a heap of rubble under which many civilians and droids were buried. San Hill watched as everything they had built was slowly turning to ashes. He turned to the bounty hunter, Durge, standing beside him, and asked why Count Dooku had sent a mercenary if he was only going to stand and watch. Durge responded briefly by simply grabbing Hill by the throat, and then prepared for battle alongside a squad of droid riders. Leaving the command center of the banking clan, the mercenary and the droid riders mounted swoops and charged into battle with spears at the ready, attacking the Republic forces. Spears against laser weapons. The sudden and organized attack by Durge resulted in a huge number of casualties among the clone troopers. Their frontline positions were simply swept away, but that wasn't the mercenaries' goal. It was the enemy artillery. Advancing into the Republic's rear, Durge managed to destroy almost everyone, depriving the Republic of its cover. The situation once again became a stalemate, slowing the Republic's offensive. Realizing that he couldn't afford to slow the advance to prevent the droids from entrenching themselves, Kenobi led the Lancer Battalion and set out to destroy the mercenary, who, after destroying SPHA, attacked the forward units from behind and passed the command of the troops to Ulfric Mon, who, maintaining the tempo, continued the assault on the capital. Confronting each other, the Lancer battalions and the droid riders ceased to exist, as both units were destroyed in the heavy engagement. Left one-on-one with Durge, Kenobi prepared to ram him with his weapon. But the mercenary, possessed of incredible strength and reflexes, grabbed Obi-Wan's speeding swoop and knocked its rider out of the saddle. But the Jedi did not lose his composure, destroyed the swoop in Durge's hands with his lightsaber, and with the next blow, pierced the mercenary's chest. Believing the duel to be over, Obi-Wan was surprised when Durge suddenly burst into laughter. Durge belonged to the Jedi race, whose physiology allowed the mercenary to survive Kenobi's fatal blow. Suffering no damage from the Jedi's weapon, the bounty hunter began to pummel Obi-Wan with his fists. Eventually, Kenobi managed to regain the upper hand in the fight and cut the mercenary in half. Thinking that Durge was now finally defeated, Obi-Wan set off to rejoin Fordo and his ARC troopers. He did not notice that the severed parts of Durge's body began to crawl back together. Despite the Republic's successes in the battle, the droid army had a chance to regroup and repel the attack. So the main objective of the entire battle was the capture of the members of the banking clan. Another reason was the banking clan's assets and the knowledge of the Moons. The Republic wanted to be the sole owner of their assets and knowledge. When the members of the banking clan were preparing to evacuate, a Muunilinst 10 squad the headquarters. After killing the guards and capturing all the council members, they ensured the Republic's victory. Sandhill immediately began begging for mercy, promising cooperation. And that would have been the end if not for the revived mercenary who had arrived at the headquarters to either save or, if that was impossible, kill Hill. But Obi-Wan and a clone managed to destroy the monster, but this is not yet the end of his story. The surrendered Sandhill was taken into custody, and his dreams of creating a third force in the galaxy burned along with the capital. The battle devastated the cities of the Moon, beneath which many inhabitants of these cities were buried. The clone army, sparing no one, marched destructively across the planet, bringing the galaxy to the brink of financial collapse. The banking clan itself lost its serious influence, as all their power was in money, part of which was captured by the Republic and the other by the Separatists. Other planets, such as Argao, Scipio, or Maigito, became battlegrounds for the two massive armies, in the maw of which they burned, turning to ash. Hill himself would be killed on Mustafar, along with the other members of the Separatist Alliance, and his banking clan would be fully integrated into the Imperial system. Muunilinst would be restored and become the financial center of the Galactic Empire. Darth Sidious did not repeat the mistakes made by the Republic. The banking clan was gripped by the throat. Any credit issuance or other business operation by the Moons was controlled by Imperial observers stationed at all planetary financial institutions. All operations went through the Imperial system, giving the Moons no chance to come even close to what they had under the Republic. Only during the formation of the new Republic would the banking clan be able to raise its head again. But that is a different story entirely. Such was the Battle of Muunilinst.